Today we will be reviewing a literary masterpiece from the turn of the 16th century, the brilliant Shakespeare's Hamlet.
The play is set in Denmark during the 11th century when the Prince of Denmark, young Hamlet, is experiencing an all-time low. After being summoned home to Denmark from his school to attend his father's funeral. To further dampen his morale, his mother has already remarried to none other than his deceased husband's brother, Claudius. Hamlet soon sees an apparition of the deceased king, where he learns what truly happened to his father, setting him on a journey for revenge. Although I see why many people enjoy this play and it is said to be one of Shakespeare's best pieces, I believe that it is relatable for people who have divorced parents and are dealing with struggles of having step-parents or a stepfather or a stepmother. I must say that I don't enjoy this play as much as Shakespeare's other plays. I feel the plot was almost forced in a way. There are various examples of how the characters carry themselves, which we'll explain later. How the final end plan didn't work out, it didn't come together. It resulted in a complete massacre of almost every main character within the play, which I think was the result of Shakespeare truly wanting to end the play in a hurry.
Alright, see, myself, I actually really enjoyed the play. I enjoyed how, as usual with Shakespeare, the language was a little bit more complicated than things that are more modern, and I thought it was a good way to challenge the readers. As well, I found the plot to be very flowing and to be very well thought out, as opposed to what he thinks. And I thought that it was a very good story to language used in the play. I always have enjoyed Shakespeare's use of Elizabethan language. This is because I myself enjoy a challenge and find it to be good when it's difficult to read. This is because I can evolve my English skills as I'm reading something for leisure. It's definitely worth putting the effort in to make sure you understand or try to understand, because a lot of his language can have different meanings or different interpretations depending on how you read it. And I feel like that's a big plus side to the complicated language and the Elizabethan era of how English was spoken.
I also feel that the language used in the play, the Elizabethan English, was very fitting for Shakespeare's writing style as well as for the time period that the play was set in. However, I'm not a big fan of the challenge that Elizabethan English poses on the reader, as I feel that in some cases the main idea or what the author is trying to say is often lost, or even the reader may read right over something and interpret it in a completely different way, further losing the author's original idea that he was trying to convey.
Right, and overall I feel like people that just read casually wouldn't want to put in an extensive amount of time analyzing soliloquies and rereading over parts that they might have missed meaning in just because it was complicated language. I mean, for people that are in academics like us, it's obviously more fitting, but people that just pick up a book and decide to read it, or the play rather, I don't think that would be as fitting for them.
I must agree, it's really not something that I think I would request or recommend somebody to read at home on their free time.
Right. So personally I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I'd recommend it to someone that isn't either advanced in English, has it as a second language, or isn't too invested in Shakespeare. The characters in this play I found to be very well thought out and developed. The fact that they were super diverse and each had their own role to play was very fitting for the novel, and it helped the plot flow very well.
I also agree with the fact that I think the characters were able to play off each other very well based on their personality traits. An example being Hamlet being more of a thinker rather than an actor, and Claudius acting in some cases rather than thinking of the outcome.
Right, they each had their own role to play, and it really helped the plot along. Also, the interactions between each character did feel very genuine and real, as if it was written after something that had actually happened. It was very well thought out.
You could tell that the characters truly were conveying their true emotions and feelings to one another based on Just the word choice that they used. I know that there's multiple cases where the character, in specific Ophelia, she had really used some key words to express how she was feeling for Hamlet or various other characters within the play.
Right, it's very clear that Shakespeare knew and understood how people work. Specifically, spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, we're going to talk about some specific characters now. First off, Hamlet, I think he spends way too much time thinking and not enough time acting. Most of this play was really just him considering whether or not he should act on what he had already promised to do, essentially. And he was just really the picture of an emo kid in the modern time period.
Shakespeare did a really, really effective job at conveying the emotion that Hamlet was experiencing based on how he was thinking to himself. So we're not saying that because he spent too much time thinking, he wasn't a deep character or a well-developed character. I believe that the role of thinking to himself a lot actually developed his character for the reader an immense amount.
In a way, it was almost as if he was overdeveloped because he had like 1,000 lines, including his soliloquies and other lines. Most of it was just him thinking of whether or not he should act and go and kill Claudius, or how he should do it, that sort of thing. Or if he should kill himself, really, I mean.
Yeah, it also exposed on how the character dealt with the dilemma, right? Because most of the play is he's experiencing a dilemma on whether to kill himself or not to kill himself, or to kill Claudius or not to kill Claudius, right? So
thought out. For example, Ophelia is also another character that shows her emotions very thoroughly and in very effective ways. Like, an example is when Hamlet goes and messes with her in her closet or her dressing room. She really freaks out and she gets really weirded out and goes and tells Polonius, just like a natural reaction would be, right? To go and tell your example, or not your example, but your experience
to your father,
exactly,
or somebody close to you.
Sharing it with a loved one and just really looking for that support, you know?
I feel that in some cases, even though Ophelia played a little bit of a lesser role as she followed her father's instructions, or she would be manipulated in slight ways by other various characters, I still feel that her character was well developed enough to make her own decisions and portray the character that Shakespeare wanted her to portray.
She was really clearly an integral part of the plot. I mean, she was one of the reasons that the whole scene at the very end, where everything actually happened, right? Like, she was the catalyst for that. Her death is what triggered Laertes being mad and what made them want to fight.
Very key character in the play.
Finally, Polonius. I don't know how I feel about him all that much. He was really, it seemed, his actions sort of seemed forced, in my opinion, just with how he tried to be so sneaky all the time. Like, it felt like it was just a joke at one point, and it just kept going and ended up just really being worn out.
I feel that Hamlet's relationship with Polonius throughout the play was an effective relationship, because it was very important that Hamlet had somebody to portray his insanity to or not portray his insanity to. And Polonius was one of the main people that took it upon himself to try to figure out whether Hamlet truly was insane or if he was all just putting on a show, right?
Right, without him, I mean, Polonius was really the bridge in between Hamlet and Claudius, because without him, there would have been no middleman to go and link the information and relay the information to him.
Absolutely.
Alright, overall, the characters, I think for the most part, they were very well done, and there were just a couple faults. They all had their small faults, some of them were slightly bigger, but overall, I'd say they're pretty good. It was well thought out and well developed.
I agree with that. In the play, there are various ambiguities, and I really enjoyed the fact that Shakespeare was able to incorporate these intentionally or unintentionally into his plays, because I really think that having a scene or multiple scenes be able to be interpreted differently by the reader can be a very effective method in any play or any novel.
I absolutely agree. I feel like it definitely added a completely other layer to the plays and the movies that were made further after, and I feel like it really just allowed for actors to spin their own or put their own personal spin on each and every scene, and it was all due to how Shakespeare used the Elizabethan English of the time and how there were double and triple meanings behind everything, and you could use that so easily.
Not only actors put in their own spin, but especially producers being able to interpret the scenes differently and expose that in their movies far, far in the future. Of course, this play was written before movies were being made.
Right.
But now, when movies are produced, if you compare them, there'll be differences between the same scene on how the actor and really the producer wanted the scene to be played.
Like, even in the movie that we watched in class, it was very evident that there were parts that were different from the play that was written that we read and the parts in the film, because of how the producer had interpreted it himself and how he just. So one example of an ambiguity in Shakespeare's Hamlet is in the final scene when Hamlet and Laertes are in their fencing battle. After the first round, which Hamlet won, Gertrude wants to toast to Hamlet for his victory. But this is the cup that Claudius had poisoned beforehand, so he tells her to not drink from it. And the ambiguity lies within her response, which was, "I pray your pardon, I will drink it," or something along those lines. People's interpretations can vary from her knowing that it was poisoned and her wanting to take her own life.
And that's why she begged to be pardoned.
Or that she didn't know and she was asking for pardon because she just
wanted to drink the drink because she was thirsty. Yeah. Another example of an ambiguity in the play Hamlet is when Hamlet is scolding his mother for all her actions, and he's really exposing his feelings towards her based on her marrying his father's brother and almost shunning him in a way ever since that marriage occurred.
Now, she didn't say much in retaliation to what he was doing, so we're not really sure what her actions were, but in the play, like I say, it's very unclear. So some actors or producers would interpret it as her feeling remorse, and others not so much.
There are various examples where Gertrude was almost pushing Hamlet off when he would expose his feelings towards her, based on whether that was she just didn't want to give him the time of day to hear what he was truly saying, or what he was saying was truly that unbearable for her, imposing guilt and grief for her actions, and almost a sense of realization by her part.
Yeah, exactly. Like in the film that we watched in class, again, she was very upset, she was really trembling, she was freaking out. However, the class's interpretation when we were just reading through it was not that it was like that. It was just that she was sitting there and Hamlet was talking to her. This is all because of how it was read and how we portrayed it as a class versus how the producer did with his actors.
Once again, this proves why ambiguities can be very, very effective within playwrights and also in movies.
Right, like I say, it adds that other layer that people can just interpret it their own way and put their own personal spin on things, whereas other things that use modern language and are so much more clear cut, they really don't have room for that. They're one way and that's it, and it's sort of boring to have.
In recap, our overall review of the play was that it was well done, and we really enjoyed the characters for various reasons. We picked apart the plot in some cases, but we feel that it was well done. And we also feel that the ambiguities in the play were very, very effective for many, many reasons.
Right, and of course the language was a big effect and had a big impact on how well and how effective the play was delivered, simply because it allowed for the ambiguities that made the play so unique, and it really just made the soliloquies and his talking so much more. It added so much more depth.
Obviously giving depth to the characters as well,
right,
with how their soliloquies and just overall conversation carried out.
Of course, just all of the interactions in general were much more developed and deepened just because of language that they used. Overall, I think I would definitely recommend Hamlet to someone that's more serious English reader, someone that's fluent, at least a native reader, someone that enjoys Shakespeare, and someone that's willing to put in the work to understand the language and deal with the challenge of the Elizabethan English.
That concludes our recap. This has been Matthias and Andrew reviewing Shakespeare's masterpiece, Hamlet.